great content today, and I want to introduce Edie. She is an amazing individual, and I know you are going to love her. She keeps talking to me about dopamine, and I got to tell you, I've got a teenager, and I know what is going to happen when I get home to talk to him about what he's been doing all day. So, Edie, why don't you take it from there and let's get the ball rolling?
Hey, Judy, I'm so glad to be here because I get my dopamine, speaking about dopamine. I mean, I do, just putting it together, I cannot tell you. So it certainly beats drinking or drugs or a lot of other options, eating chocolate chip cookies. So welcome, everyone. And I was just telling Judy, if you don't know about dopamine, you're missing out. Because if you're struggling, if you're having challenges, if you're a manager, supervisor, and yeah, you're pulling out your hair, it may be because you really don't understand what is at the root of dopamine. So let me get started. First of all, it is the catalyst. It is the catalyst of motivation, performance, and productivity. You know what? Before we even get started, how many of you think of dopamine as a good thing, and how many of you think of it as, sin personified, as the evil? Can we just get some reaction in the room? And Judy, tell me how people are responding.
We've got some folks raising their hands. Go ahead, Stacy. What do you got?
Me, I just wanted to raise my hand and say it's a positive.
It's a positive. Okay. Do you know that it also reinforces negative behaviors? So I think we do. We think of it as the feel-good, happy chemical. We're going to be talking more about that. It's associated with pleasure and happiness, but it is not. It's actually a craving. So there's a lot that actually I just learned in the last few minutes. So because I don't stop doing deeper research on this, but the bottom line is it reinforces what we know, because many of us know, the triune brain, the neocortex, the emotional brain, and the reptilian brain. And so whatever we've done in the past, it wants more of that. It's more of a liking, but even more so, it is a craving to repeat a past pattern. Do we have a problem with that? Yes. I have a couple TED Talks that talk about that because, and we'll be talking about social media in just a minute. So the bottom line is, Earth, we have a problem. I don't know if you're aware of this. And if a lot of you are supervisors or managers, I can't believe that life hasn't, as a supervisor or manager, leadership position, hasn't become more difficult. Productivity has seen its biggest drop in 75 years. Are you aware 70% of employees, they're not engaged. 20% are actually engaged in actively sabotaging and really bringing down others. So we don't have many that are truly productive, and you can't be productive unless you're engaged. Then we have, fortunately, this has died down. I just about rolled over when I heard about silent quitters. They would do a favor, just not even to show up at all, because what they're doing, I mean, I follow college basketball. Duke's got quite a reputation, I think. Was it how many of the top 10 choices came from Duke? Actually, we got one of them here in Charlotte. But the fact is that we want to be part of a healthy, thriving, productive team. And so when you have a bunch of silent quitters, nobody else that's worth anything or worth being productive, everybody's worth something. Although it may seem like it varies at times, they're not going to join your team. So it costs, and this is a few years ago, I'm sure it's up. The GDP cost is 7.8, not million, billion, but trillion. Now, there's mixed stats on working remotely. We don't have time to get into that. But, we're often experiencing a toxic culture. And I want to say something that I want you to remember, because later on I'm going to be talking about tension. And that is, remember this, the ultimate side effect of mastery is apathy. Think about that. Think about the absent-minded professor, and half the time the TA actually teaches us more. So once we had the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, I personally think we're seeing a little bit of it here in the United States. So we'll be talking more about that, but most of you know about flow, the psychology of flow, the flow state, which is between anxiety and boredom. It's where we're really our peak performance best. And so we have to really realize the value of challenge. See, people innately have to be challenged. And the fact is, well, look on TikTok. And the challenges aren't good. You know, how many Kias can you steal? And just in Charlotte alone, there were 230 stolen in one city. Was it a month or two? It was a short period of time. We have that. We have how much vodka can you drink? And we have college kids dying because the need for challenge. So we're going to revisit that as well. 92 million jobs are lost to AI in 5 years. 1.25 million are created. So it tells us the dynamic of change. So we are losing jobs, but do we have a workforce that's prepared for that shift in what's happening? So I used to do a program, well, I still do, on employee engagement, but companies are losing more than 350 billion a year. That's a lot of money. So how does the brain work? You know what? The brain is a wonderful organ. It starts working in the moment we get up in the morning and does not quit until you get into the office. How many of you have some agreement with that? How many of you are trying to motivate people where Robert Frost was probably pretty right on? So what's happening? And this really, it concerns me. I've done a couple TEDx talks. One is brain fitness for kids, cloning the DNA of Einstein. And I've actually created a character building program for children, because if we don't get their brains wired right when they're young, it's over. And that is the challenge that you're dealing with now. I just have to give you an example. I was just in Wisconsin. I'm originally from Wisconsin. And you know, my niece, God bless her, is a pediatric chiropractic physician, and her kids don't eat potato chips; they eat kale chips, and they love them. They don't eat banana muffins; they eat spinach muffins, and they love them. So it's all about, see, we get pleasure from what is familiar. So if we do it right from the start, it really, prevention really does solve a lot of problems. So right now, the reason our minds are poisoned, and let me tell you, this is in my second TED Talk, which is AI and digital dopamine making us numb. Kind of is, probably more social media. But the fact is that we are experiencing infobesity. I mean, I get over 200 emails a day. 15 are probably relevant. I got to do something about it. But the messages, the bombardment that is constant, is putting us in a stressful state because it's overload. Our brains are archaic. They were not built for this barrage of information. And so what happens is it puts us in a stressful state. What happens when we're in a stressful state? We lose our critical thinking. I have a sign here someplace and it says, critical thinking, the other national deficit. And there is some truth to it. So the reason people are making dumb decisions, and decision making is flawed, is because the infobesity overload is putting us into a stressful state where we are actually, listen to this, our brains are being rewired. I don't know if I put it in the TED Talk because they're very fussy about, but it's not only rewired, there's enough research now. They're being damaged. They're literally being damaged because what's happening is we're doing a short circuit in the brain where we are responding now, you know, from the instinctual reptilian brain, fight, flight, and flee or fade. I added a couple more. And so we hear in the news every day. I mean, whether it's road rage or whether it is somebody that didn't put pepperoni on the pizza and gets shot, it's just crazy stuff. Because the loop, you know, and we learn that from, you know this, that the sound bites are last. People don't read big books, most people, like Gone with the Wind. They want just little sound bites. I mean, it used to be a 30-second elevator pitch, 1 minute. Now we're down to seconds because the brain, it's just going in the impulsive, in the lower level of the brain stem into the instinctual brain, where we are just reactionary and not proactive. And if you don't believe me, listen to the news. I mean, I'm flying to Ireland as soon as I'm done with this talk. I just want the plane to stay in the sky. I mean, there was 1 week where every day, and how many, was it 15,000 near mishaps just in the past year? People, and so when they say it's a mechanical problem, what does it go back to? It goes back to the decision making of the mechanic. I remember when Boeing was a sterling silver organization, they got a lot of lawsuits, and they've got them coming because safety lost out in a priority to money. And I've talked to somebody that worked there. And if you report it too many times, a problem, you might get fired. So we have to look at a shift in values, which takes me to the Snooki bill. I don't know if you guys remember Snooki, but she was paid more than a Pulitzer Prize winner. I believe it was at Rutgers years ago. And it was a graduation address. And you know what her end message was? We're paying that kind of money. It was party hardy. Really. That's what you're going to tell a bunch of graduates from college. If I were paying out of state, that's actually a private school, I believe. If I'm paying that kind of tuition, and that's what my kids are learning. So we have to look at the shift in values. I'm going to throw something else in here that may not come up later. Is that we have taught basically a mindset of a victim mindset mentality. You know, whether nothing is your fault. I love some of the advertisements with weight loss now. Have you noticed that? It's not your fault. We don't have to blame people. It doesn't have to be something that's fault. But let's take responsibility for it. If you're eating 3 bags of potato chips and a dozen Oreo cookies while you're watching TV at night, it may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility to make some changes. So we've kind of taken away responsibility with it's not your fault. We've done it with religions, with race, with socioeconomics. No, we are not going to change until we embrace the problem and accept some responsibility for it. And that is what you're also fighting as a manager. So, and it's the flood of toxic chemistry. It's 6 times more. The internal drug addiction that we're dealing with is more toxic than all of the climate problems that we're having. Now, listen to this. 97%, there's a 97% chance your kids are a dopamine addict. But the fact is, a lot of these studies were done years ago. So that 97% chance of a kid being a dopamine addict is now out in the workforce. They're part of Z. They might even be in your millennials. So we are dealing with an addiction. And if somebody is a cocaine addict at work, we do something about it. But this is kind of an invisible, silent addiction. And I'll tell you, I'm sitting in a sunroom right now. And when it was built, I told Champion, I would not pay $1 for any of the staff they had here because every 2 minutes they're sawing something and they're checking their phone. I mean, this is a problem. I don't know. Can you say, check your phones in when you check in at 8 o'clock? But something has to be done to interrupt that whole process. So is AI bad? No, I use AI. I use ChatGPT, but it's just a matter of who is controlling the game. And the fact is that most people are seriously addicted that you are supervising. And that means there are more distractions. There are more disruptions. They forget where they're at. And the error rate is up like 28%. So is that why Boeing has planes fall? I don't mean to be picking on Boeing. It's happening with everything. But that explains the problem. We have flawed decision making because of the stress. We're leaving out the prefrontal lobe where critical thinking and reasoning is, and it is a problem. What was the last thing there? Yes, Stanford researchers state that we're too dumb to know we are in immortal danger. Well, that's a positive thought. So here's our variety of feel-good chemicals, but we're going to be focusing on dopamine. Now, as I said before, I I'll tell you, when we were growing, I'm in my 80s, but I have a biological age, believe it or not. I just was tested, 47. So you're not going to get rid of me yet. With dopamine, I was rewarded as a kid. I was playing outside all the time. So whether it was, winning the croquet game, I remember that a lot, climbing the tree, I played the piano. I got dopamine from that. If I got jilted by my boyfriend, I would play the piano all night. I had positive resources to build me up. What do our kids have today? What is the one source of dopamine? You guys know it. It's right here. It's in their hands. They don't take a walk in nature. I have to admit, I remember when we were in the Smoky Mountains, I still snow ski. And we were not Smoky, we were out west, Colorado. And I think my grandkids at that time were pretty young. It was the first time they saw the Rocky Mountains. And they're all on their phone. And I remember as a child just seeing the Madison Capitol and being in awe and, winning the relay race, whatever it would be. That's how I got my dopamine. That might be why I'm in my 82nd year. I'm probably working too much, 12, 14 hours a day. I just started a nonprofit to wire kids for health, happiness, and success because I get my dopamine, but it's a positive way because I am making a difference. Now, eating food. The 3 top releases of dopamine. There are 3. Guess what they are? And they're all quite different. One is sex. And I would rather get mine this way, but then I have nothing to compare it to, so I'm not sure it's better or not. But another is, believe it or not, chocolate chip cookies baking in the oven. And guess what the third is? I am a thrift shop. I'm a collector. It's a problem because I get things for $1 that are probably worth 1,000. It's hard to say no, but that is it. It's shopping. And I love a good deal. So some of you can probably relate to this. So for me, it's celebrating the little wins. Let's just keep moving on. So I already talked about the great brain hijack. So remember, the brain is like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. So if we're using Chat GPT, and I use Chat. I mean, it'll do a paragraph faster. I get it. But I am already aware, and I speak on innovation and creativity. I got to tell you, I am aware that I'm cheating. And so I will use Chat, and I'm not exercising my creativity as I used to. So it's all about balance. And does Chat save us time? Absolutely. But then we have to ask the question, with that time that you are saving, what are you doing? And if it's just more time on this, getting your dopamine fix in a passive way, and addictive. Let me tell you one other thing. This scares me. Do you know that they did a brain scan of somebody that had too much time on social media and on their phone, on their devices? They did a brain scan of somebody with too much this wire time and somebody who had just taken a hit of cocaine, and they were very similar. That scares me. So if you have little kids, you may want to be more of you may want to set some boundaries. So I talked a little bit about the filters, the infobesity, and critical thinking being a problem. Let's just go on because I did talk about the triune brain. So the question is Google making us stupid? Well, kind of, because they're not philanthropic. All social media is designed to be addictive. And so this is what you're struggling with at work. You just got to get their attention. And how can you do a good job without it? So just look at some of the stats. Facebook makes that much, 112 per user. I don't use it that much. I don't use Spotify. So that's an average per year. The other problem is The people that you are supervising aren't influenced by their parents like I may have been or you may have been, but it's often the influencers on TikTok, which, I mean, we just saw some parents now in somebody that was supposed to be the authority on parenting, they're now in jail. That's a little bit concerning too. So as we move on, we talked a little bit about excessive screen time. Yeah, by the way, 2 hours for teens. That's all. 5 to 17, 2 hours. Check your kids. And so before we work so much on artificial intelligence, maybe we should do something more about natural stupidity. I have to agree with him. So when we look at the internal drug, which is dopamine, the quick fix and a win, it is released with rewards. If it's monetary, getting a raise, but also drugs. So, we know that drug addiction just is not going away. We have sex addicts. We see it on the news. What's his name? Combs, Diddy Combs, whatever. And I mentioned shopping chocolate chip cookies. We have an obesity rate with adults. What is it? Around 50%? Maybe the chocolate chip cookies should be exchanged for some kale chips. So it's what delights us. But here's the thing. Dopamine is equally as addictive. It dissipates. So we need more and more of it. So if you used to be on here checking and scrolling, maybe 20 minutes before you went to bed, don't do it before you go to bed, by the way, you might be sucked in and all of a sudden an hour is gone. And so we need more of it. I mean, Google and all of those giants, they know what they're doing. It is designed so we want more, just like Oreo cookies. It's hard to eat just one because there are chemicals in there that stimulate the appetite. And so does dopamine. It demands more and makes us, we go from risk averse to risk seeking, and we get a little bit crazy. I mentioned the brain scan already. We'll pass through this, but dopamine actually supersedes orgasm, which used to be that. Have you noticed some of the reports now that people are having fewer babies, there's less sex, less intimacy, relationships have changed, and it's because, yeah, they're getting more exciting things online. So I've talked about the phones, and I want to make sure I keep going. I talked a little bit about the cerebral cortex and how the brain is getting rewired. I'm moving along because there's just so much I want to cover. But you know what? It all comes down to perception. This guy perceives himself in a gated community. And I guess jail cells look a little bit better. It's all how you reflect. So be aware that for yourself, the people you supervise, everything is cause and consequence. If you don't like the consequences of your behavior, you got to look at the cause. And the cause is a reflection of your belief system, which is in the subconscious mind. So if you're trying to change and alter and make behavior more effective or be more efficient and optimize performance, there is no way that you are going to do it unless you go to the source, to the root of the problem. You can clip a dandelion, but you have to get to the source. And the source is your belief system. And there's something that goes even deeper than your belief system, and that is your identity. There's the old thing about the scorpion, the wanting to get across the river. I think it was the frog wanting to get across the river. And the scorpion says, "Oh, hop on my back. I'll take you there." Frog is totally grateful until he gets to the other side and the scorpion bites him. And the scorpion says, "That's what scorpions do." So what you're looking at in your staff is you've got to look at what is feeding their identity, which is their belief system. And until you alter and disrupt and change that, you are not going to optimize performance. You're still going to be dragging behind. So I already talked about the silent quitters, and yeah, that it's a matter of getting more. So learning the internet, a lot of people miss their pre-internet brain, one, because it worked better. And so these are kids. I have a program and a book on bullying. So these are, but you know what? These kids are your future workforce. This is what you're challenged with. So if I had $1 for every time I got distracted, I wish I had a puppy. Is this what you're dealing with? Is it hard for people to even have a complete thought? So I already kind of talked about the prefrontal cortex, how we're doing brain damage, how there is a loop and we're losing out on critical thinking, period. And remember, anxiety, and what are the kids, 5, 7, 6, 7 years old? There's a fair amount of anxiety already in our children. That didn't happen when I was growing up. I mean, the biggest anxiety was taking off the training wheels from my bike. But since COVID, and you got to realize that people that are younger, remember, before the age of 7, there aren't filters on our brain. We're almost in a hypnotic trance. We're more in an alpha than a beta state. Where rational thinking and coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms aren't developed until about age 7, which is why I created the children's program, I Believe I Can Fly. Because if we wire kids before 7 right, we're going to have not only a healthier workforce, but they'll be eating more kale chips instead of potato chips. Because remember, when we have stress, when we have anxiety, that's when the brain goes into a short circuit, doesn't go up to critical thinking. That is why, what do we hear a lot of times? Take 3 deep breaths, right? Take a sip of water, count to 10. Those things have value. Why do you think we say that? Because if you pause, get people to pause. So they are not reactionary, but proactive. And to get them to do that, you have to get them to shift. It's like, how many of you grew up? I love shifting the manual shift cars, but they don't make them much anymore. But it's shifting gears from your reptilian brain, the instinctual brain, to the emotional brain, going up to the critical brain. That's why, when people have a few drinks, they go down to the emotional brain and they get sweet and syrupy and you just want them to go away. But they have a few more drinks and they're in the parking lot fighting. So you can see people shifting from different levels of the brain. So your job as a manager is to really manage and maneuver states, emotional states that people are in, and their critical thinking states. So if they pause, if they take a few deep breaths, if they count to 10, there's time to become more aware and look at a situation and reroute yourself to change the pathway to a healthier and a more positive one. So you need to have that pause where people can shift to a higher level of thinking. And that is what's not happening because everything is rushed, everything is deadlines, and it just seems to continue. So now I want to talk a little bit about the tyranny of habits. I think it was Aristotle. Everybody claims this quote, but it was Aristotle. First, we make our habits, and then our habits make us. We are what we repeatedly do. So when we're talking about dopamine, that is a habit. They are not rewarded for achievement and work. They're not even rewarded by a raise a lot of times because this will supersede it. So what dopamine does is basically seek repetition, whether it's positive, whether it's me at my age still trying to accomplish more and do more, or if it's just zoning out before the TV or scrolling. It's one of the two. So it then we then have to address the subconscious. Now remember, the subconscious is 1,000,000 times more powerful. It controls our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, our choices, our behaviors. Do you know that this is MIT research? This isn't my opinion. MIT just came out with a recent research report where, do you guys remember when we used to have, what were they called, focus group surveys? Have you noticed we don't do them that much anymore? You know why? Because people don't even know why they buy. They don't know why I do a program on sales. They don't know why they buy what they buy, but they don't know why they buy into what you might be selling in terms of values, work performance, high performance work teams, or whatever. They have now discovered that before the moment of decision, before you're even aware of a decision to be made, a decision has been made by the subconscious mind, that it has picked up things. So when we talk about first impressions, it's before you even appear, that they may have decided how they feel about you. So if common sense were so common, why would we see more of it? And we're not. We're just not. So maybe if we tell people the brain is an app, they'll start using it. Maybe that's our way to, use it or lose it. So, and this is harder to do at work, but can we just maybe do some of this? Go on a technology fast. Observe your behaviors and redirect it. So what we have to do is observe, get people to be more aware of their behavior, which might be self-sabotaging their success and the success of the team. Awareness is the first step. And then get them to reroute, give them other options, choices. First of all, they have to release the bad behavior. But then what can we do to reroute that neural pathway in the brain? Because that's what we're doing. That's what neuroplasticity is about. I do brain training and hypnosis. It's just about creating new neural pathways. Now, I know at work you can't say, okay, I'm going to hypnotize you. But you know what? You can do it in other ways. What is a very easy, common way that you can have the same effect? It's conversational hypnosis. How can you change a behavior pattern? Can somebody answer that? Just want to see what you might say. Judy, do we have any responses?
Not yet. Hold on a sec.
Okay. Anybody? Nobody? What did I ask again? I want to ask it again. What did I say? I'm on to the next thought. Okay, I'll tell you. It's telling stories. It's telling stories. When I wanted to increase the confidence of my kids when they were little, I didn't say be confident. If you tell your staff, work harder, in an age when we know that work smarter is probably better. No, you tell stories, because stories activate the emotional brain. And there's more energy in the emotional brain. There's more power there. It's part of the subconscious. So if you're just speaking to people in a logical way, people aren't that logical. Besides, what do they say? We decide by emotion and justify it with logic. If you really want, the fudge, the piece of fudge, or the chocolate chip cookie, what do? We say, I'm on vacation. We rationalize, and that's RATIONAL, and another word, lies. We produce rational lies to support what we want. So you have to get at the core of yourself and your own performance and your team is, what do you really want? That is the question you have to be asking, and then we will, how many times do you want something? And then somebody will say, well, my brother just did. I wanted a glass art piece. And he said, well, do you really need it? Well, you know what? We'd probably buy nothing other than food if we really only bought what we needed. But want is where the emotions will support the behavioral change. So your success as a supervisor manager is really mastering the art of asking questions. It's the way you ask them and what you ask. But ask what they want, because once you know what they want, then you, like following a deer in the woods, you track it back to what their desires are. You track it back to what motivates them. You track it back to what their belief system is. And remember, once we have an identity, once we're a winner, then we think like a winner. I have a book, Winning, How Winners Think What Champions Do. I interviewed everybody, Rosa Parks, Oprah Winfrey, but people who have gone above and beyond that grew up on the other side of the tracks. They were all clear on their calling in life between the ages of 3 and 9. And so it's really, getting people to understand what do you want? What do you desire? What do you value? And then, it may be doing some rerouting. It may be doing some reframing. So what we have to do is, first of all, release it. Release the negative pattern. That's number one. Number two, you reroute it with a story, with suggestions, with a new neural pathway, with asking them the questions. And it's always better to ask the questions than to tell them, because when you tell people, it's like a teenager, you deal with resistance. Let them come up with their options, their suggestions, and their solutions, because then there's no objection. And you get an energy flow from within them where you're not fighting them. It reduces the power struggle. You always, when you're dealing with difficult people, I was just speaking for SHRM in Asia, and I did something on difficult people. What you want to do when you're dealing with a difficult person, and God knows they're there because of the blame game, because we're teaching people to feel like a victim. What you want to do is get in alignment with them. Please remember this. You be like them. And some of you are familiar with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. You mirror them. You match them. You talk like them. I'm from Wisconsin, but when I'm in the South, sometimes I have to slow down, because their perception, if I talk too fast, is that they feel rushed and they feel pushed. And that meets with resistance. So you have to look at the energy. You have to look at tempo. You have, maybe I'll have to take off my hat if it's threatening, but that's part of my identity. And so what you do is you mirror and match it. You get in alignment. You agree with them. I don't care if it's agreeing that we both have 2 kids. You find things that are common ground. You get in alignment. And I do an exercise, it's actually on my website, where you push and you have a power struggle. This is typical of dealing with difficult people. And so I told the person to push me one more time, but this time I went with them. And then I turned them around for 5 minutes and they follow me anywhere. So we have to get into internal alignment with ourselves, our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, our behaviors. Because if the subconscious mind has another agenda going, remember, I said it's 1,000,000 times more powerful. It will something just fell in here. It will sabotage you. And I'll give you an example. If I hear this one more time, am I against goal setting? Heck no. Do I think goals work? Not by themselves. Not by themselves. If goal setting alone worked, why do people have the same New Year's resolution year after year after year? And you know what? Over 90% of you do. Oh, I'm going to lose weight this year. I'm going to stop eating chocolate. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to stop smoking. Year after year, that's why Planet Fitness and if everybody that signed up for Planet Fitness would show up, they'd be in big trouble. That's not what they're prepared for. And they know that most people, after a few weeks, they drop out. Goal setting is not enough. So if you want to reroute and reframe, what you have to do, there's no question about it. You have to go beyond the goal. But you know why? Because it's too abstract. If you want to make change happen in the performance of your people or in yourself, you have to speak to the subconscious and engage it and get it to back up what your goal is. When that's in alignment, then you will see what I call a neural shift, and things will start moving. But without that, next year, January 1st, I can promise you'll be in the same spot. And why is that important, and I may have to skip over a few. How are we doing? I'm going to just check how we're doing for time. I want to talk a little bit about visualization. You know what? I'm just going to talk off the cuff on it. When we get to it, it'll be okay. So I'm a big proponent of visualization. That's what my children's program is about. That's what I do in the brain training. John Kennedy is on the call. He does brain training. This is how you can make change happen. Why is visualization so important? A lot of you are saying, oh, I do affirmations. Well, that's cool. But that's like goal setting. It's too abstract. The body is like a pull toy to the mind. You have to speak the language of the body. Do you see children reading Webster's dictionary? No. What do children read? They read picture story books. So that's why telling stories is important. That's why we have to have visual images, because listen to this. If you have a visual image in your mind, it processes 60,000 times faster than the word. So all of you who are doing your affirmations, it's like goal setting. Is it good? Yeah, it's good. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just simply not enough. You must take that affirmation. And so when I talk about rerouting yourself to be a better manager, or rerouting the people that you are trying to accelerate their performance, you really need to understand the tools that'll make a difference. And I always say, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you're going to treat everything as if it's a nail. And if you're going to be a good supervisor or manager, you have to look at each individual. I'm going to get off track of the visualization for a minute. Why do you think? I remember when I started doing management consulting 50 years ago, we had theory X, we had theory Y, we had theory Z. How many of you are old enough to remember that? Then we had Deming. Oh, and then sales. We have spin selling, we have integrity selling, we have relationship selling. You know why all of those theories have come and gone? And that's why you have to be holistic in your thinking, because they only focus on a certain part of the population. I do a lot I'm certified in Herman brain dominance, left brain, right brain. Some would talk theory. X might talk to theory to the left brain people. And then we have people oriented, and that's right brain. And they all left because it didn't deal holistically. You have to look at each individual, every circumstance and situation, and say, you know what? It all depends. And the more diversified you are, the more effective you're going to be. So going back to visualization, know that what the mind sees, the body believes. And once
We do have a hand raised.
What was that?
We do have a hand raised. Pamela, do you have a question?
Raised, yep. We're taking questions as we go along. So feel free to ask as we go. Yes. So I think I've made my case on visualization. It's more concrete. The body understands it. The body is a vessel of truth. There is no behavior change until you speak the language. And I've covered goal setting, willpower, intentions are not enough. Look at identity. Why? Do you know that most NFL players, NBA players, I think actually the NBA is actually worse than the NFL, because that surprised me. One loses almost everything 3 years after they quit their sport, the other within 5 years, because a lot of them grew up not with money. They had a different mindset and identity. And if you can make millions, you will lose it if you don't have that money mindset that will protect it. So it's the same thing at work. Here we go back to the intent. Remember this: intentions plus beliefs times emotion is behavior change or action. So what is the intention? And this is where your questions are so crucial. You got to get, what are your intentions? Remember what I said in the beginning, 20% of the people are at work to sabotage engagement. So is that their intention? They may not be aware of it. What is their belief? This place sucks. It's just not a place okay. Then you magnify that times emotion, and you've got a problem. So when you're reversing it, this is the formula that you need to keep in mind, because everything is energy. Your thought begins it. Your emotions amplify it. Your action increases its momentum. Life is an energy exchanging process. Every thought, every word, every intention, every goal, every color. I have a certain color on. Green is used, remember, in the old mental institutions, it's a balancing color. Every color, every note on the scale gives off a different energy. It is your job to guide and direct it, and then get them to learn, give them the tools so that they can guide and direct their own. Okay, let me just do a fun exercise. I want you all to lift your right foot. We need a little break here. Lift your right foot off the floor and make clockwise circles. Can everybody do it? Just take your right foot off the floor, make a clockwise circle. And now keep doing this. Draw the number 6 in the air with your right hand. And what happens? Be honest. Your foot will change direction because your brain is pre-programmed. And it is your job in HR as a supervisor, manager, leader, whatever, to make some change there. So it's all about the mental somersaults for change. And remember, see, the subconscious harbors experiences that may sabotage a new script. So it is crucial that we have repetition and reinforcement. John Azaraf is saying about 66 days. And that's why a lot of addiction programs will be a couple months. So you've got to get in alignment. You've got to know what's going on in the subconscious mind, which directs all of this. And then take the conscious mind with critical thinking, creative thinking, which we're losing, because if you don't use it, you lose it, to guide and direct and reroute what is coming from the subconscious level. So hopefully, let me just do another quick exercise. I want you all to take your index finger and make a Q on your forehead. Just do the Q. And then I'm going to ask, did the little stem go to the right or the left? How many of you went to the right?
Edie, I went lowercase.
You went lowercase? Did you go to the left?
I did.
Okay. No, if you go to the right, you're more growth oriented. If you go to the left, you're maybe a little bit of a fixed mindset, and I can help that. So
I do. We did a question though.
Everything can change. So what we're dealing with, and you know what? As I go along, I want you to have this be relevant to yourself, how you can change and reroute, but also the people you supervise. It all comes from perception. And what is our perception determined by? It is your past, the people, the messages. A parent that might have said, "You'll never amount to anything." So. I'll give you an example. I have vacation rentals here. Oh, God. So this woman and I did not hit it off well. Most people like me. So she starts screaming at me and saying, "I'm senile, I have dementia, I have Alzheimer's." I'll send her this. And because she thinks she left her Roku, whatever, here, and I cannot find it. So I have dementia because I can't find what she forgot and left behind, but she didn't. It's not here. But see, this is what I mean, what we're dealing with. Things are so twisted. There was something on the news. Some guy was a landscaper for a guy that had this beautiful mansion. He knew they were on vacation for a week or two. He had a huge party there. He made $3,000 charging people, had this huge party. And he very sincerely said on the news, I broke the rules, but I didn't break the law. See, if you're dealing with a belief system, and it's all how we perceive. What we see is dependent upon what we expect. And the example I love best of all, because I do love music. How many of you know Joshua Bell, the violinist? Okay, before he was rich and famous, he was playing in the subways, I believe, of New York, okay? And the children, they have a video of this. The children, the mother is rushing them and pulling them by the hand. It was a 3 or 4-year-old. And she was mesmerized. This little girl was mesmerized by his playing. And the parents are just rushing because really they've got something more important to do. They're going to sit and wait at the next bus stop. He had a $3.5 million violin. You know Joshua Bell, he's probably one of the best. He's up there in the top 5. But
One is,
people missed it because they weren't expecting somebody like Joshua Bell with a $3.5 million violin to be playing in the subway. So get to the heart of it. Okay, what is the question?
the first one is what can we do at work to motivate staff?
Okay, it's kind of everything I'm saying. It's getting in alignment with them. They won't change until you go their way. You have to understand. That's where the ahams come in. The I understands, all of that. And then, remember what I said, you don't tell them what to do. You tell stories. It engages emotion. They identify with it. When my son was little, I would give him, and he'd pick up on it. I would give him a story how when he struck out, how he'd have a new mindset. And this is when he was 4 or 5 years old. My kids have done very well because I implemented it. This is what you have to do with your staff. You have to start rerouting them. I also mentioned you have to make them aware of their behavior. Make them aware of their perceptions. Wait, what is their belief system? Is that sabotaging things? Are you sabotaging yourself? Because remember, dopamine rewards familiar behavior. That's why we have drama queens. You may have some at work. But if all they know, let's say they grew up in a family with an alcoholic, all they know is drama. They didn't know if dad or mom, usually dad it was at my day, come home drunk. Was everybody going to get beaten up? That's what they know. They create chaos. So what you have to do by mastering the art of asking questions, make them more aware of their behavior, and then ask questions. What are you going to do about it? How does this serve? That's one of my favorite questions. How does this serve you well? How does this serve the team well? And if it doesn't serve you well, that's when I said, that's when you delete it. And then you reroute. You remember, you release it, you reroute it, you expect something new, you reframe it. You know, you got to get them to change their perception of themselves and reality. And everything starts with yourself. Their perception of their self, of their selves, is going to be reflected in the behavior you see, in the performance you're getting. So you just have to kind of follow all of those things. And then you have to get people to kind of detach, because if they're being reactionary, I always say to my clients, say, if somebody cuts you off, road rage, let's say, isn't that interesting? You won't get upset. So what you want to do is detach them from their emotional brain and get them into creative problem solving, okay? So to motivate your staff, it's telling a story like I'm going to tell you right now. I love this story because I do speak on innovation and creativity. I think it's the currency of the future. Years ago, this is years ago, there was a strike, a big truckers strike, and they had to get some product from Chicago, Illinois to Indianapolis, right down the road. But what was happening, the guys on strike were shooting at the tires. And so, but they had to it was medical supplies. What they did, here's the kind of creative problem solving. You need to start, and you need to fire questions by mastering the art of asking questions, getting your staff to do it. How did they get the supplies there? They got a school bus. Who shoots at a yellow school bus? They dressed up a guy as a nun. Who shoots a nun, especially if you're Catholic? You'll never get into heaven that way. And they got the supplies there. This is what I'm encouraging with all of you. Creative problem solving. You don't tell them what to do. It's a matter of you asking more questions. And I cannot believe we're running out of time. Let me just see. What did you guys see here? What do you see? What are the answers? Coca-Cola? Some of you saw Coca-Cola. Some of you saw Coca-Cola. See, you see, and your staff is experiencing the world based on what they have experienced in the past, which may not be very healthy. So when we have that chemical chaos, you're not going to change everyone. You've got to get that alignment. So let me just
have one more question.
Okay, I'll take one more.
Karen, can you talk to us?
Okay. Okay, while she's coming back, just let me know. I want to talk about number 4, the Rykhoff effect. It's in my first TEDx talk if you want to learn more. They have seen unbelievable changes in kids' behavior. I have seen it personally. I saw kids in 3rd grade drawing stick figures, and if you have them imitate you, who do you idolize? And I hope it's not Diddy Combs or whatever. And once people see, we have the wrong idols today. That's the problem that you're dealing with. But if I want to be like Beethoven, I will actually increase my piano playing skills. So once the bottom line is act the way you want to be, and you'll be the way you act. You got to get your people to act as if. I studied with J.L. Moreno, the father of psychodrama. If I can help you with role playing. Once I had somebody, she couldn't express anger, but I told her to be an animal and grow like, so she could do that. You have to change their identity by starting where they are and get them to express it, act it out. And that's a way of releasing it. And then you can make the subconscious and conscious change. Is that person still there? I will take their question if they are. So you got to write a new script. I talked about the visualization, but I want to talk about one other thing. And if she's there, I'll take her question. But here it is. You know, John Asraf, I love him dearly. He also is into neuroscience. John had a vision board of having this beautiful mansion. And years later, he's unpacking his stuff. And he had on the vision board that ideal house. Oh, I got goosebumps. He was moving into it. What the mind sees, the body believes. You got to change. You have to introduce new images for them. You have to fertilize it. And then I want to just mention Jim Carrey. Did you hear about the story about Jim Carrey? Jim Carrey, the actor, he wrote out a check. He was poor, living out of garbage cans for all I know. He wrote a check for $10 million? It wasn't 10,000. I think it was 10 million. Yeah, it had to be 10 million. Yeah, 10 million. He writes out a check. He post-dated it 10 years. He should have made it 2 years and he'd have gotten it. 10 years later, he got a contract for 10 million. See, your job as a manager is to plant the seeds. Look, you're going to think big. As long as you're going to, what I say is you're going to think no matter what. So teach people to think bigger, better, and bolder. And that's how we're going to start seeing the change. Because imagination and possibility thinking really are, that it's the currency of the future. So it's reframing the problem, expectation, flow, the 4 R's, recognize it, release it, reframe it, retrain. And, you know, maybe we can have another session because there's just so much. So we have 3 problems: communication. People don't know what to do. Training. People don't know how to do it. And then motivation. People don't want to do it. And it's the 3rd one that is the biggest problem that we're dealing with. So, you know what, Judy? I think we're going to have to do, oh, Lord, I have so much good stuff and I know our time is almost out, but I want to share one last thing. And I love Eric Weinmayer. He's the blind guy that climbed Mount Everest years ago. Do you guys remember that? He's blind and he's climbing Mount Everest. And people were like, Eric, why would you do this? You're blind. When you get to the summit, when you get to the top, you can't see it anyhow. And Eric said, it's not about the view. It's about becoming more than you ever thought possible. It's about introducing challenge. It's not, this is his quote, it's not the mountain we climb. It's not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. Strength doesn't come from winning. Struggle develops your strength. And so it's all about challenge and challenging them to become more than they ever thought possible. And once the image in your mind is crystallized of what you might be, that new identity, that new image, you cannot. I have a story to prove it. and we'll talk about it next time. So I have really enjoyed this. And I have a one-pager. I'm going to Ireland. I'll get it to you when I get back. If you email me at edie@raether.com, it'll have the dopamine spelled out in a way that in one page, I think you'll get clarity and how you can put it to work. Feel free to call me, not this week, but July 6th. And if there's anything I can do for your association or your organization, this is how I get my dopamine. I would love to help make it happen. Thank you.
Edie, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, she said you could call her, so reach out if you're looking for some help. Have a fabulous trip and stay safe, okay?
And I've got the green for the Irish already going. Take care, everyone. Bye for now. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.